Hi everyone, welcome to lesson 67 of this RTS tutorial series. This will be the lesson where we begin setting up finding housing, or as I'll say throughout the video, billeting for our unit. Now, you'll see as we go through this that a lot of what we're doing could actually be done using regular blueprints. There are some key differences in how we do that, and there are key differences in functionality. And I'll talk more about these in later videos. This video is split into two parts. I do have the steps for both parts in this video in the description below, but only the timestamps for the relevant video listed in the description. That said, fire up your projects and let's get started. Welcome back to the editor. Now, in this video, we'll be setting up our billeting, so finding housing or residence for our units. Now, this video might be split into two parts, given how much we have to do to get this to work. So if that's going to happen, I will let you know, and I will put the steps in both videos, and it will just be a continuous set of steps, 1 through approximately 8 total. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our blueprints, and we're going to fly through this step because we've done this before. We're going to create a new Enum, and this is an Enum we'll return to throughout the rest of this section. So right-click, Blueprints, Enum, and this will be Unit Status or Status Enum. So open that up. Let's pin that into there. We're going to add in 2 statuses today. So add new, and these will be is idle. And the second one will be needs billeting. And I'm using billeting because I'm thinking Command and Conquer, military style RTS, more on the side with military term. All right, save that. And once that's done, what we need to go on to do, because that's step 1, is step 2. We need to set up some new variables inside of our building master and add in a slight update. So let's go to our building master. We're going to have to follow some of these steps through onto all of the buildings, by the way. What we're going to do first is we'll create our new variables, and we'll just open up units. Let's right-click and duplicate our occupants, and this will be our residents. This will be who currently actually lives in the building. Occupants will be who is currently in the building. Slightly different nomenclature there, I realize. And this really only matters for one building anyway. The next variable we need to do will be a float, so let's just create that, of max residence. Like I said, it's not a float, I lied, it's an integer. And it will be, we're just going to categorize this now as a building variable. We can get that to open. Alright, as I said, we need to do an update. And where we're going to do this update is right on this and when we come into the event begin overlap for our entry point. So we have one check here where we are checking is the building under construction, so checking construction status, and checking if it's an engineer, or in this case, not an engineer. We're going to break down the next branch, this conditional statement, and we're going to put an and boolean in there instead. So we need 2 things to be true. And what we want to be true is we want to know, is the current number of people occupying the building less than our max residence? We're going to get our occupants. We are going to get the length of this, so that's how many occupants currently are in there. Remember, we clear this when people leave the building, or we remove them when people leave the building. We want to know, is this less than, not less than or equal to, but less than our max residence? If it is, then we want to be able to send people in. So if the target building and the occupant count is less than our max, we want to then have the arrive at building trigger go off. Alright, that's the majority of step 2. The little bit in step 2 we have to do, it's just a fiddly bit, is go through each of our buildings and set our max residence. So I'm going to open up my factory, and I'm going to set max residence to 10 here. Compile, save, close that out, go over to my training post, and I'm going to set my max in my training post to 8. Compile, save. And this will also affect construction, by the way, because units, the engineers, have to be able to enter the building to construct it. Our residential, our barracks, I'm going to set to a value of 6. Compile, save. And finally, our silo. Remember, not only for construction do units have to be able to enter it, but our harvester units have to be able to enter it to drop off resources. Feel free to change how that's set up if you want. I'm going to put it to 2 and not worry about that change because that would just take way too many videos, and you should have the rough idea currently on how to do that. So, based on everything we've done previously. So, all of that done, that takes us through step 2. Now, step 3 is we need to set up our unit sort of information on this. And I'm going to go over to my structures first. And I'm going to open my unit profile structure, and I'm going to add a new variable in here that I'll call residence. And residence will be of type residential building master. There we go. I'm going to compile or save that. I am now going to go to my unit master. So if I go down to units, I'm going to open up my unit master. Notice it's changed because we've changed the profile. And I'm going to add some updates. So there are 2 changes I need to make. One of them is going to be really rather obvious, I think. And that is, well, actually, maybe not so obvious. Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of this content, starting from set passenger, clear fog, all that stuff, everything below arrive at building, and I'm just going to lower it down here a tiny bit. So what I'm going to do at the beginning of this arrive at building is I'm going to add in a new branch. And if this statement is true, we're going to carry through into there. So what statement needs to be true? Well, we're going to kind of replicate what we've done previously. We're going to check, is there space for the unit? So we're going to get our target building. Actually, I don't want the function of that one. Actually, it should be set target building, I think. Anyway. No, sorry. When I said it should be set, I think that's named wrong. I have to double check what that does in a second. But we want to get our target building. And we want to get its occupants. Honestly, we could have collapsed what we had in the other thing down to a function and just called that function. We want to get its residence, its max residence, and we're just going to repeat what we did already in the last one, and we want to check the length of it. All right, so if the length of this is less than our max, then we want to go on to the true branch. And just because this eats up a lot of space, I'm just going to highlight all of this. I'm going to collapse it down to a function. It will be check space. It will be a pure function. Our return value will be has space. Just put that there. Off of our false, I'm going to get target building. And I'm going to set it. And I'm going to leave it blank so nothing is put in. So we're clearing that out if there isn't enough space. So both the building and the unit are making sure that nothing can get through. It's kind of double checking itself, if that makes any sense. All right. Now that said, that is the first change we need to make. Now the less obvious change we might need to make is on our birthday check. In fact, I'm just going to line that up a bit better. There we go. At the end of our birthday check, we need to do a profile update, which we should have had done already, but I kind of skipped that step. Because if we pull off of here and we get our profile, so we want to set our profile, and we split this structure. We want to get our profile over here. Sorry, that's the wrong profile. We want to get our unit profile and split this. Notice we have age, which we're updating. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pass in our unit name to our unit name, our unit profile sex to unit profile sex. We're going to skip age and just do our image and do our residence. Even if this is blank elsewhere, we want that to pass through. And we're going to send in our age. And speaking of this being blank elsewhere, if we go to our construction script, and again, I need to remember I can just find the set unit features, we want this blank at the start. If you want to add in a starting residence, you need to know what that object is and pass it into here. But I like them having to find billeting first on their own. All right, so that takes us through step 3. So next what we need to do is we need to move on to step 4, which is setting up our status check. And the way that's going to work is we're going to go to our AI folder, and we're going to create 2 new folders real quick. One will be called tasks, one will be called services. And I'll give a quick definition of what tasks and services are in just a second. Let's open up. Actually, before we open this up, if you have an error where you can't get both the Blackboard and Behavior Tree open, I'll show you how to handle that. They actually are both open, you just can't tell. So let's open up our Blackboard, and let's open up our Behavior Tree. Hey, I got the error this time. I was saying an earlier version of this recording, I didn't. They are both open. To switch between them, up at the top here we have our Blackboard. Sorry, our Blackboard's there, and our Behavior Tree. You can just switch as you want between them. So the first thing we need to do is in our Blackboard, and we're going to leave our Blackboard open. And this is one of the reasons why I like having both windows somehow open, because we need to get these names right. We're going to create an Enum, and this Enum will be status. I'm not sure I have self after that. I don't remember actually ever setting that, but I think we need that anyway. All right, so our enum status, remember I said we don't actually set the particular enum when we set the variable, we do that elsewhere. We do that in key type. We're going to go into our key type and search for our unit status enum. There we go. We can save it now. And we're going to add in another one of object that will be residence. And residence will be set to our residential building master. We're going to save that. And now we're going to hop over to our behavior tree. And in our behavior tree, we have our root. And only one thing can come off our root. And we have 3 options of what can come off: a selector, a sequence, and a simple parallel. A selector checks for certain statuses and certain settings and goes, based on what I'm seeing here, do this or do that. So whatever comes off the selector as the second level is picked based on whatever we're telling it to look for. Sequence will run things in order from left to right, and the sequence will continue until something in that returns false and ends the sequence. And then simple parallel will run objects in parallel. We're going to start with a selector. So we want to select what it's going to do. And we're going to have at least 4 or 5 branches off this by the end. So I'm going to name this as get status. And you can put spaces in this, by the way. Off of get status, we're going to have just 1 branch today. But we're going to have, as I said, 4 to 5 total. I haven't quite picked how many we're going to do, because there's a couple of ways to handle this. So what this is going to do, it's going to select from those 4 or 5 what we want. Now, how is it going to do that? Well, we are going to create a service. And what a service is a, let's call it a blueprint for now. It pretty much is a blueprint that runs as long as a composite stays active. And this is the composite right here. And all it's doing, it's basically like a tick. It's checking for various things that are being passed through. It's used to modify the state our AI is in. So it's used to, in our case, check. Are we harvesting? Are we an infantry unit? Do we need billeting? And that's the one we're going to handle today. But it's all going to be in one service. So we're going to do new service, and notice it creates a new blueprint. First thing I'm going to do before anything else, I'm just going to step back out onto the main graph here, and I am going to name this blueprint, or this new service here, as BTS for Behavior Tree Service, and it will be unit status. This is our state our character is in, or our unit's in. I'm just going to drop this into services before I forget. Go back into my behavior tree. Hey, I got both open now. Awesome. That makes me happy. I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to add a service. And the service I'm going to add is that unit status. So when we populate this blueprint, it's going to run through things in here, and it's going to check for certain things. Based on what it finds, it's going to say, do these other things. And what's going to be the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a sequence, so a composite, we're going to have a sequence, And I have a sequence because you might want to add other things onto here. I'm only going to really have one thing on here, which is to find the billeting. You might want the unit to go to the new residence. You might want the unit to walk to the residence beforehand, then actually set it, and then go into it. You know, you can have any number of things you want here. So that's up to you. I'm just going to have one thing. So honestly, I could just do sequence actually is what I do anyway. And we're going to have attached to this a check. And this check is going to go, all right, we have something here. It's saying go to here. And that check is going to be what's known as a decorator. And it's going to be a blackboard decorator. So what is a decorator? A decorator is just a flow control statement. It's basically if then. If this is satisfied, then do this. That's the easiest way to describe it. I will be doing a tutorial on behavior trees separate from this series just to go over all of this. And I'm going to name this one, and the no name here, needs billeting with a question mark. And the sequence will be get billeting. So we have a whole bunch of things that we need to set up, this service. We can set this up right now because we have that already in our Blackboard. What we're going to do is on value change, we are going to observe ourselves. So the unit, sorry, not the unit. So anything that's related to this is going to be self. We are going to have it set, but it's not our Blackboard key. It's the is busy. It is our status. We want to check our status. And we want to check, do we need billeting? So if our status on this thing is equal to need billeting, it could be, we had the need billeting on a different branch, and this one's looking at that branch, and we'll go here. So that's that self bit. If we have another branch here, that's lower priority because it's to the right. If for some reason this suddenly says the status is need billeting, this would activate and run off. That makes little sense in our setup. Both will look at itself and at ones of lower setting. So if it needs billeting, then it will run the sequence and get billeting. What we're going to have off of this sequence is a task. So let's create a new task. Again, let's go back out here. Let's select this task and let's rename it as BTT for Behavior Tree Task. Find billeting. All right, let's move that to our tasks folder. And that now takes us through, oh, sorry, that's not true. We should drag off of here, find our task, find billeting. This takes us through setting up the behavior tree. Now, if we run it, nothing's going to happen because we haven't populated the service or the task, so it doesn't really help us. That is the next step of this video. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a step 4, setting up our status check, which is the service. So let's go over to that unit status we have here. And the very first thing we need to do is we need to get a node. As you notice, there's nothing in here. So we need a starting node. And like I said, this is a tick. So we're going to see an event receive AI or tick AI. And you notice we have a controlled pawn, we have an execute pin, we have our delta seconds, and we have our owner controller. Each of these can be used for various things. What we care about, since we're going to make a cast, is we care about our controlled pawn. That's what we want to know about. We want to know details of this. So we're going to pull off of here, and we're going to cast to our unit master. Now, we only want to cast because this is a tick, and casting off a tick is bad. We only want to cast to this once. So we're going to convert this to a pure cast just to make life a little bit easier. And we're going to promote this to a variable, which will be our unit reference. We are going to put that into our references folder. And then we are going to get our unit reference. We are going to check, is it valid? Question mark 1. Plug that into the execute. If it is not valid, then we want to set it. If it is valid, then we're going to continue on to the next bit. So let's set up that next bit, and we'll collapse that down to a macro, as I like to do with our reference casts. We are going to get our unit profile. So unit profile, we want to get it. We want to then split that structure. We want to check, is the residence valid? So is valid. Ooh, that was wrong, is valid. We want to check is valid with the question mark. And we're going to plug that is valid into here. Now, we technically don't need to plug this into there because it's a tick. It'll come back through. But you know what? Good form says we're going to. So we're going to plug that into there. So they both result in the same thing. And I'm just going to highlight everything there, including the reroute. I'm going to collapse this down to a macro, and this will be my reference casts. I'm going to move the execute pin up there, and I'm also going to type in the rest of the word execute so it goes away. Our object is our unit, and our output pin is our then pin. There we go. Now, if you really want to keep things nice and neat, you can open this up and neaten this up as you see fit. That is completely optional. Yes, I'm doing it anyway, even though it says optional. Compile, save, go back to your event graph. If this is valid, then what we're going to do is we are going to set our unit status to idle. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to create a new variable. And this will be called status enum ref. We're going to put that in our references, and this will be of our unit status. The next thing we need to do is create another new variable called status. And it has to be called status, at least in my case. But the reason I left this behavior tree open and the blackboard open is in our blackboard, we have this status here, and this is what we're actually setting. So it has to match this name. So let's go back to our service. Let's change this to a blackboard key selector. And what we're going to do is we're going to set our status to is idle here. And then we are going to pass that information along to our blackboard. So we're going to grab our status. We're going to get it. We are going to set blackboard value as enum. Plug the execute into there and plug that pin, the enum status, into the value. So it is finding the enum name status in our blackboard and setting it to idle. So that takes care of the is valid. If it's not valid, then we want to run an event for finding housing. So I'm going to create a custom event that will be called find billeting. And this will run, again, remember this is a tick. So if this is not valid, this is going to run a fair amount of times. When this becomes valid, we won't see it again. So I'm just going to pull off the is valid and do find billeting. There we go. So, actually, I'm going to put that reroute in there and drag this all down there. So if we need billeting, what we're going to do is we're just going to grab all of this and we're going to control W it down here. We are going to set our enum off this find housing, and it will be needs billeting. All right, compile and save. That takes us through setting up our service. We'll have other things in here later on as we go on throughout the series, such as checking, do we need food? Is our unit fatigued? Is it terrified and running away from battle? And all that other fun jazz. All right, so that takes us through, I believe that was step 4. Now on to step 5, we need to start setting up our task for find billeting. The first step of this is relatively simple. We are going to just do one thing. In fact, actually, we can skip doing this right now and do it later to make things a little bit easier, but hey, I like splitting this up to make things just more coherent. We're going to do event receive execute AI. So this is a command from the AI. This is, you're receiving input from the AI to do something. Do this now. We are going to cast to our owner, which is the controller, and to the pawn. We're going to do what we did in the last part of the video. we are going to cast to our unit master controller. We're going to make it a pure cast. Now this is on a tick. We're just being careful that we don't, because this is actually coming through. This is only going to run when this is set. So this does come through a lot. We don't want to recast over and over again. We're going to promote this to variable, and it will be our AI controller ref. This will be of category references. We're just going to move this down a little bit. Actually, I don't need that reroute. We're just going to move this down a little bit. We're going to get is valid with the question mark coming off of here. What we're going to check is valid is our unit controller reference or AI controller reference. If it is not valid, then we are going to set it. Then we are going to cast to our pawn, so our unit master. Sorry if you can hear my dog. He just wants attention, so he's begging me for attention. And we're going to just set that there. And we're going to pull off of here and promote to variable, which will be our unit reference. If you notice I'm using ref and reference, the longer ones just get ref, the shorter ones get reference. And regardless of if this is valid or not, we're going to do another is valid check. Put a little reroute there. Continue through to there. This one matters more. You actually do need to have that in this one because it isn't on a tick. We just want to make sure. And we're going to plug in our unit reference there. If it is not valid, then we are going to set our unit. That was a yawn if you can hear my dog. Yes, I know it sounded like a whimper. I looked over in time. It was him yawning at me. All right, just lining this up a bit better. There we go. All right, so that takes care of what we are going to do for setting up our finding billeting. Now, we're nearly 30 minutes into this recording, and I know that there's at least 20 more minutes of things to do. So we're going to split this into 2 parts and pause here. We'll resume with the next step. All right, all of that said, I know we didn't get anything we could see done at the end of this video, but we've gotten most of what we need done in place. I'm going to quickly save. That said, if you've enjoyed this video, hit that like button down below, and make sure to hit the subscribe and notify icon so you know when the next tutorial is out. And as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next video where we'll finish setting up our finding billeting functions here. And I hope that you have a wonderful day.